Welcome to our panel this morning for National Carers Week, Caring in the Digital Age. My name is Melissa Docker and I'm the Acting Executive Manager of Policy Development and Research here at Carers New South Wales, and I'll be facilitating the panel. I just want to start today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're all meeting from today. For me, that's the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And I'd like to pay my respects to any elders past, present and emerging, and to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. We want to recognise the long traditions of care and so many things that we can learn from caring for the many decades, thousands of decades into the past. The session today will provide you a brief overview and provide you a brief welcome for the session, what we'll focus on. We'll do a little bit of housekeeping, we'll introduce our panellists and do some facilitated questions, and then we'll have an opportunity for audience members to ask some questions for our panellists to answer. The session today will focus on caring in the digital age. So we know that many services and supports have moved to the digital world. There's no alternative than to access them through digital platforms and across digital channels. And for many carers, they report to us that that comes along with a lot of challenges. It's harder to access, takes more time, and a lot more energy in some ways. We know that digitisation can be really beneficial in some ways. You can get greater access through all different channels at times that better suit, but we also know that it can also make things much harder. So today we want to have a conversation about what that looks like for carers and some opportunities to make things easier as we move into the future. In terms of that Q&A session at the end, just before we get started, you're welcome to add any questions or comments in the chat, but we'd ask that you put any questions in the Q&A function. So you can see down the bottom, you should have 3 dots. And you have a Q&A space and you should be able to add questions in there. We can also move some of those questions from the chat if that's easier for you, but please feel free to get involved and add some comments as we go. So I'd like to introduce first, as we get started, our panellists who'll be joining us today. Nicholas Smith is a Carers New South Wales care representative. Nick is a former carer for his mum with Alzheimer's dementia. He's also the head of community and engagement at Caring Co, where he helps people to navigate the aged care system and access home care services. We also have Jess Wilson today joining us, the CEO of Good Things Australia, an organisation focusing on innovative approaches to digital inclusion across Australia. With 20+ years in social purpose and government sectors, she drives practical solutions and community-based support to help people and communities stay connected, confident and included in a rapidly digital world. And finally, we have Richard Senna joining us. He's the founding director of YourLink, which partners with organisations and government to build digital confidence for seniors and carers and the care workforce. Passionate about inclusion, Richard champions practical everyday digital skills that help people to communicate, stay connected and manage essential transactions of daily life with confidence. So I'd just first like to hand over for you all to take 1 to 2 minutes to introduce yourselves and tell our audience a bit about you and how your experience intersects with the digital landscape. And happy for maybe Nick for you to jump in first.
Certainly, yeah, thanks for having me today. My name's Nick. I'm a former carer of my mum with Alzheimer's, taking a career break from my job as an engineer at the time to move back home. And I suppose going into that, I thought, I'm digitally literate. I, grew up in the digital age, so to speak, and I thought I'll be able to use those skills to navigate, find aged care support for my mum, and slowly realised just actually how difficult and can be, and the piecing the digital navigation puzzle together was an additional layer of, challenge that I didn't really actually foresee. You're dealing with the emotional toll, but then all of a sudden you're dealing with state, federal forms, portals, all of that sort of comes in and really became a large focus and was so time consuming for me to do while also trying to support my mum over that time.
Great, thanks. And Richard?
Good morning, everyone. I'm really pleased to be here and talking about this important topic. I feel very passionate about digital inclusion for our carers and for the role that carers play in our community. I have also been a carer in the past, and I do think the theme of this week was Carers Week. You are a carer, you have been a carer, you will be a carer is something that really resonated with me, so I'm really excited by this conversation. We partner with organisations in delivering on-the-ground digital skills programs. So for us, is around the practical skills that build digital confidence. That's the magic word for us. We talk a lot about digital confidence for the individuals, and that can be very individual. So as we talk about this, we'll kind of bring some of those topics to light. We've worked with older people, carers, volunteers, parts of the workforce. So all those parts, and carers often cross over into the workforce as well, and other parts, and business owners as well, who's another part that I work with. And so, yeah, I've seen a number of versions of what digital exclusion looks like, or inclusion, and the barriers. And so really keen to, yeah, have a great conversation and throw some things out there.
Thanks. And Jess, do you want to tell the audience a bit about yourself? And
yeah, hello everyone. It's great to be with you, and I'm so looking forward to this this conversation. I'm coming to you from Gadigal country today in Sydney, and I suppose it's really interesting that I've ended up in the kind of tech space, because I'm a social worker by training. This is not, I never expected that I would be in tech, but actually what I've realized is how important it is to, in this world today, that we are making sure that everybody is able to be able to use technology, because it is the way that we connect, it's the way we learn, it's the way we work, and it's really, really important to make sure that everyone has the skills and confidence. And we know that carers are more likely to be left behind, as are people with disability, as are, a whole range of other people. I suppose personally, my brother Dan is an artist. He is a footy tipping, Queensland Football Club loving person, and he also has Down syndrome. So my mum and dad have been his carers for a long time in informal care. So I think, I'm very well aware of the shift and change that is happening in their ability to access, support and systems, and supporting them to look at, well, how do we do this in a digital world is an ongoing conversation in our family. So I think definitely come from a passionate personal position as well.
Thanks so much for sharing, Jess. And it sounds like you all bring a wealth of knowledge, both personally and professionally. So it's great to hear that. I guess we've been talking about how we're in this increasingly digital world, especially following COVID. We know that really put the fast pace on things, with a lot of digital services moving online, but also socialization, how we connect with family and friends as well. So we just wanted to reflect a little bit first on some of the challenges that's brought with it. So Nick, you did talk a little bit about some of that difficulty accessing portals and state and federal government. But how is the increasingly digital landscape, how did that impact on your access to support for yourself and your mum?
I think it really, I suppose, like, thinking back on it, it was going through that, like, trying to be organized, trying to, having to do the research myself. And I suppose the realization to me is when I started going to support groups and talking to people, is just like, obviously I'm not alone in this, but it was the fact that I was even struggling, that it's just like, there's no wonder people fall through the cracks. No wonder people aren't, they don't respond to the email, they miss the phone call, they don't know how to download and sign a document. Like, there's just these small little things which, if people aren't supported to, or aren't enabled, that they're not able, that they miss that date, and then they're not able to, get the support they need, or that they just unable to access something that the people that are providing it think that person, the assumption is that they have a level of digital literacy without actually understanding what they can and probably can't do, and the support that they need to be able to then interact digitally with their services.
Yeah. And I think that's a really interesting point about that assumption that there is that confidence and skill there. And I think that ties in a lot to the work that you do, Richard. And I wonder if you have any kind of reflections on some of when you are supporting carers to build their digital skills and confidence, what some of those barriers look like, or some of those key challenges.
Yeah, I think the assumptions word is really key. Partially assumptions around the skills, and partially around the time that they have to stay up to date. I think there's an assumption about, how much time someone has to actually invest in keeping up to date with what's happening, in investing in the skills that they need. And often it's in context when they need to know what needs to be done, sort of thing. So, and carers often are, like Nick said, part-time or maybe stepping back from the workplace a bit, so the incidental learning that they're getting in work that we often get in a workplace is missing. Those things that we learn often peer to peer, side by side in context, we don't have that. So I think for carers, the lack of time is probably the big thing that I see that is invested in staying up to date, and it's accelerating so fast. And then just to kind of, we were chatting about this as we were kind of joining, the speed of change of technology kind of means that you're staying up to date with a platform or something, but if they're being taught on a point and click, and then as soon as it changes, it's a barrier of, oh, what do I do now? I hang on, it's changed. And so that critical thinking, that kind of ability to move through that process hasn't been necessarily built into the training. So that's something I'm really keen on when we do training, is building that into how do you problem solve when something doesn't look like you think is going to look.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that really speaks to kind of that broader approach and thinking about, we are just continuing in this direction, and how do we prepare and plan for the future? I guess, Jess, in thinking of that broader digital landscape, can you see what future changes and things maybe create challenges for carers in fulfilling their caring role in being excluded from those spaces?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all talked about, and we can talk about again, I'm sure, the speed at which AI is being implemented across our society, and what, the opportunities that creates, but also the challenges that it's creating for people. And I suppose what we talk about is we need to make sure everybody has the basics now, so that they don't get left further behind as that keeps moving at speed. I mean, I think one of the other things that's really important is, in terms of carers' perspective, is that they're often navigating different systems. So it's not just one government department they're trying to talk to, as Nick kind of said. It's kind of different systems. So you might be working in the NDIS portal, or My Aged Care, or both, and they're both really different. And the government is also starting to implement digital ID as a way of people being able to engage with government services and log in and all of those things. Now, that's great if you have all of the ID that you need, but for some people in regional rural communities and First Nations communities, they don't necessarily have that. So I think, again, it's the systems that people have to interact with and have to understand and be able to keep up with the change that happens, and there's a refresh and all of those things. I think that continues to be a challenge for people that don't have a lot of time. And as you said, Richard, don't have that opportunity to continue learning. So, for us, it is, the spaces like Richard provides, which is to bring people together, and the opportunity to learn together with other people like them is really, really key to supporting people to keep up to date.
Yeah. And that's really helpful, I guess, in moving into the next question in what helps. And I think bringing people together, like you suggested, Nick, even you said, drawing on that peer connection that you had, and being able to kind of connect and go through that process together. In terms of overcoming some of those digital barriers, is there, from your experiences broadly, what do you feel has been the most helpful things in overcoming some of those digital barriers, or kind of what we can look at broadly to support digital inclusion? We'll get into a little bit more in some of the detail of different components of that, but where's a good first start in helping, or what's helped for you, Nick?
I think having a little bit of honesty around it, like brutal honesty, the fact that it does take time and effort, like we keep talking about, and making, trying your best to give you that time and space to actually navigate the system. It's not going to be something that, is going to happen, in a real short time period. It is something that you're going to have to potentially chip away at, within the My Aged Care system. Your assessment to services could be a year. So I think you've just got to be accepting at the moment. Hopefully we can see that change with the latest aged care reforms. The other one is, again, leaning on support networks, family, friends, neighbour. A lot of people, just get that support through asking their neighbour, or, within their social support groups. And then I suppose extending from that and talking about the different systems, I was just reflecting, there's also trying to keep the in-person support there as well. I know we're talking about digital, but when you're caring for someone, sometimes you just need to go into Services New South Wales and like, I'm representing my mum, can you help me? And making sure that there are those options are still there as well.
Absolutely. And that in-person component to walk you through, I know one of the biggest kind of bits of feedback that we get is you hit a roadblock in a form and then there's no one to talk to, and then you're kind of just stuck at a crossroads. So that in-person support component is complementary for those who need that support or can't access the digital. Richard or Jess, do you have any kind of thoughts on what might be beneficial with supporting carers to overcome some of those barriers?
Yeah, I might just jump in and go. Yeah, I think the definition of carers in terms of that they're a single dimension. That there's a linear pathway. I think my big education working with Carers New South Wales and carers has been that it isn't. It's not just you have to do this, you have to do this. It's quite messy to some degree. Putting it what Nick said. The honesty about that, and then there's this digital part side by side. So building that confidence, for us, I really do believe it's the confidence, the small wins. So if it is a bigger path that Nick's talking about, or just the bigger kind of landscape they need to navigate, acknowledging what they have done or what this person has done, because that is the building block. And some of that really does need to be done in person as well. That peer, the side by side, and there's the Service New South Wales is the more formal structures, but there's the organic, informal kind of structures that we've got to mobilize to some degree, even, and that's what I love about the good things, the Be Connected Pro, some of those kind of things. It's that tentacle into where the carer may be that needs help.
Yeah. It's almost like building a digital resilience almost. I know that the resilience, the word is, up and down at the moment, but certainly it's that ability to adapt and apply those skills more broadly as well. So that's, I think that really speaks to that component, Jeff.
Yeah, that's the words that we use. Absolutely, Melissa, is that, digital resilience. That's what we talk about, because things are going to keep changing. So as Richard mentioned, how do you problem solve through changes? Like that's, developing the skills to be able to do that. It's really important. And I think, for good things, like our whole focus is on digital inclusion, and we have, different programs that we deliver through community organisations. So, we're a small team, but we have a network of over 4,000 community partners across the country who have, supported and participated in programs to provide support to people in their communities. So I think there are examples of, support out there that's available through community centres, libraries, disability support organisations, organisations like Richard's, like a whole range that are there to provide that support. But there are some limitations. Like we have, funding to support programs for people over 50. So if you're a carer over 50, there's definitely support available for you through Be Connected. It's a brilliant program. There's fantastic resources that have been developed by the eSafety Commissioner, and they can help people to be able to navigate some of those systems. Even just the basics of MyGov, like all of those kinds of things are definitely available there. But there's not funding for broader programs. There's definitely no funding for programs for carers. And I think, that's a real gap that we continue to talk to the government about, at state and federal level, to say, you can't keep digitising spaces without providing the support to people to keep up. I mean, I would say, though, that definitely in Service New South Wales, we know that people in service centres are there to help people to navigate that system. It's the same in Services Australia. They do have people that will help you navigate their own system, but it's only their system. It's not the broader skills and support. And I think that's ultimately what we need longer term.
Yeah. And so, Jess, it sounds like there's a lot happening on the ground, and there are some of those instances, which is great. And we are seeing some funding. We're also seeing on a larger scale in the New South Wales space, we have the New South Wales Digital Inclusion Strategy. There's also the National Disability Inclusion Standards. Reflecting on, I guess, some of those things that are going well, but also ongoing opportunities. Are there opportunities for these strategies to go further, or are they doing enough to really address some of those fundamental issues? I don't know if anyone wants to reflect on.
Can I start on that
Yeah.
one? And then I'll hand over. So, I mean, I think it's fantastic that New South Wales has a digital inclusion strategy. It looks great. All of the kind of aspects of it are exactly the kind of thing that we would say, and, you know, from our experience would say is really important. The challenge is there doesn't appear to be any funding behind it at this stage. And so they're kind of doing it based on what they've kind of got already. So that to me is definitely a gap. And there isn't a national digital inclusion strategy. So different states are doing different things, and until, you know, and these are the same kinds of issues for people depending on where they, you know, everywhere they live. So whether they're in regional New South Wales or regional South Australia, it's very similar. And so I think, you know, it's really important that we're having a conversation about this at a national level as well. The First Nations Digital Inclusion Advisory Group has established a roadmap as well, and that's fantastic too. But again, it's focused on one group of people, not the whole system. So I think that's the real gap for us, is how do we make sure that the systems are joined up and that people are kept accountable for making sure that people can access their programs and their services that are digital.
Great. Thanks, Jess. And Richard or Nick, did you have any thoughts on that as well?
I'll jump in. Yeah, look, I think it's positive. I mean, I was just going to say, I think on the one hand, you know, it's absolutely positive that there's something being acknowledged at that level. You know, I'm not going to sit here going, you know, it's never, you know, it's not being done at all. We've got to acknowledge that. And particularly, I like that there's been acknowledged things like digital literacy. Often we see things around tech, and what I struggle with is when we feel the messaging that we see is we're going to tech our way through things, sort of thing. And I feel like the literacy and the complementary skills is what we need. I also do like that there's a trust, the element of trust, and I think that is the big challenge we're going to have. To Jess's point, when we talk about carers who may be navigating their own skills, but the person they're caring for and their digital skills and level of kind of ascertaining what's true or not true and some of that kind of stuff, I think that is probably the thing that is kind of the thing that scares me the most right now about the next stage. Is like a bit of a trust fracture that we're on the corner of to some degree, and how do we all kind of mobilize for that? But that's kind of my 2 cents.
Yeah, and it is a really complex space. We want to kind of embrace some components, but also how do we do that in a way that's safe? And we'll touch on that in our next question. But before we move on, Nick, did you have any thoughts in terms of if there are opportunities?
I just think it's a step in the right direction. With these, and especially some of the work I do in the health sector, is, you want it to be measurable. You want to be. It's not just do a strategy, do an action plan, and set and forget. But it is having that, making sure that there is progress, but then also the funding to meet that need and where it needs to go, especially for carers, to the actual, to get it to the carers, and especially in the regional and rural hubs, in making sure there's an impact there where it's needed most.
Absolutely, and that measurable piece, and I think something that we've seen is ensuring that carers are identified as a group in this conversation, so that we can ensure that the measures that we're putting in place, are we measuring how they're working for carers? Are they actually meeting carer needs as well? So thanks for those reflections as well, Nick. Just going back to, I guess, what Richard was touching on around that safety component. So with carers and the people they care for increasingly accessing services and supports online, they face a heightened risk of cybersecurity. We know scams are a huge challenge at the moment. But there's a lot of other cybersecurity risks, data breaches, things like that. So how can we support carers who might be navigating digital services and supports for themselves, but someone else, they're required to release really personal information to access these services and supports? How can we support them to stay safe online when there aren't offline alternatives, or they're required to provide this high level of personal information? Anyone want to jump in?
I've mainly just got more reflections on that. Yeah. It's, because you end up essentially taking, or at least managing two identities, yourself and the person you're caring for. And you're in charge of a lot of the information is very privacy driven. And like I had just initially used a password protector myself, but I'm very aware of those risks. And, then I've got to be managing my mum's email box. Is she getting scams? Because, it'd be like, oh, I've got an email from so-and-so, and I'd be like, don't click on the link, don't click on the link. All those things is like you are putting another lens and again adding to that time and energy to be monitoring both of these to make sure but also when you're tired and you're exhausted as a carer, it's very easy to get to slip up, and you get a call and you're thinking, oh oh, maybe I was talking to someone about that. So I think not really have a specific answer, but just like the effort that it requires and how important it is to also be thinking about that when we talk about digital inclusion, in training people how to be aware of that and then also how to manage it.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know there's been unfortunately, some really concerning cases where carers have been in points of, transition in their caring role or crisis. They've been time poor, emotionally under a lot of strain, and they've gotten those calls, and they've gotten, unfortunately, scammed and lost significant amounts of not only their own finance, but, the finance of the person they care for. And it is really important to have things in place and consider how we can support carers with that. Richard or Jeff?
Yeah, I think I think the ongoing education and training is going to be really key, because there's so many parts to it. So I think, bite-sized kind of regular communications from all parts of community, obviously people that know the topic and stuff, but also, we kind of share things around, keeping an eye out for each other. I do like some of the platforms and tech is starting to acknowledge, things like legacy contacts and family sharing and some of those things potentially to maybe help ecosystems kind of look at, be together a bit more. Because sometimes I think in a caring relationship, there's the carer, but there's also other people that are part of the caring dynamic, and someone might own the digital part, but someone might have the health part or some other aspect. So it's never this simple thing of the one person kind of being it to some degree. So I hope that the platforms kind of keep developing to acknowledge that as well.
Absolutely. It's such an important part. And interestingly, we see a lot of young carers take on that digital caring role, like where they are in charge of that digital navigation, but that still needs to intersect with everybody else that is kind of involved in that caring role. Jess?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that's really important for us all to be aware of is that it's really hard to avoid being scammed for anyone. And what's important is that if you are scammed, if you do make that mistake of clicking on a link because you happen to, that you tell someone straight away. Because I think what we've seen is that people they feel really embarrassed. They feel really like, oh God, I shouldn't have done that. And that can make it worse, because things can happen. You can lose more money. So I think, having the trusted person, having your trusted neighbor, having the community person, or being able to talk it through and go, right, what do I need to do now is really, really important for everyone. And to just say it's okay. This is what's happening. Like, this is not your fault, actually. This is not up to you, and we can educate people as much as we like. There's going to be a new scam next week, and so I think just making sure that people are aware that it's not just them. It's not just carers. It's not just because they're stressed. It's actually, it's part of society, and governments and corporates and industry need to make sure that they're doing that stuff, and they are improving it. But it is part of our life. So let's be aware. Let's talk to people about it to make sure that it doesn't get worse. Yeah,
absolutely.
I was just going to say, just I totally agree, and I love normalizing that. I think that that kind of level is one of the things we talk about in session, and it's definitely, you're spot on, is kind of letting getting people to talk about it in their peer groups as well, and just definitely talking about it.
Yeah. Because otherwise, I mean, I think it's also then reporting it to your bank straight away. Like, don't, making sure that you take the steps that you can as soon as you can, without kind of going, I'm just going to leave that for 24 hours because I feel really terrible. So, yeah.
Sorry, I
Nick,
just
were you
wanted
going to say something? Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, maybe reflect on yeah, well, how important those peer support groups and that
Mm.
community are as a carer, because it can be so isolating. You're at home and all of a sudden, you're not necessarily keeping up to date because you're dealing with all these things, all these other things. Because I remember when I used to work, I would be getting the phone calls from my family saying, "Hey, I just got this email," and because I was working, I'd be sort of getting those updates on what's sort of out there in terms of the latest
Mm.
scams. But then obviously, Kara, you have these different you have a different focus at that time, and that's why it's obviously really important to keep talking to people and normalizing it, so then you can keep supporting people and the peer groups around you.
Absolutely. And I think the other piece that comes up a lot in this is that sharing of private and sensitive information. There's the active, proactive scams, but I guess on a lot of these digital services, you have to provide, a picture of your ID or Medicare number, bank detail. Like you might have to provide a lot of private information. Is there anything that, could support with that process? And I know we've had carers that don't, even for activities that we do, we say, oh, we're going to need a form of ID or remunerate our care representatives, and even they are hesitant to release their bank details to us. So to be able to kind of have that remuneration. So is there ways that could be supported, I guess, for carers who are constantly either themselves or the person they care for having to give out that private information or navigating that?
I think that's where the digital ID option is a positive. And New South Wales has done a great job of kind of having that stuff progressing, and the federal government is as well, because it does mean that you have one time that you update that information, and then in a secure way, and that then you're able to identify yourself in different examples. So I suppose that is where that's beneficial, but not everybody's using that yet, and we know there are challenges with being able to use that system as well. So I think and there's a responsibility of organisations as well, on all of us, to make sure that we are being as careful with personal information as we can be, storing it securely, but also only asking for what we need. And I think that's really important. And it's fair for carers to say, do I really need to provide you with my ID? Like, is that really necessary? So I think, keeping questioning what's really necessary. Of course, if you want to be paid, you're going to have to give your bank details. That's going to be difficult. But, there are secure ways of doing that, as I know that Carers New South Wales uses. So providing people with that information about how you keep people's personal information safe is really key too.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that it's that communication of what's complementing the tech solution that is kind of, so I'm finding in sessions slightly ajar to this is the whole moving to financial digital wallets and the cards on the phone. I'm finding I'm having to educate people about the safety and why that is, how it is safer, or the reality of what it is or isn't safe, as opposed to the card, because they need to understand the transition to that. And so, we're educating about, yes, the tech is there, but you need to help people understand, how does it keep it safe, or what are the things to ask the questions about, and some of those additional things.
Great, thanks. Nick, did you have any thoughts on that one? Or
one of the challenges that I definitely experienced, just talking about not necessarily the details part, but is representing my mum and being an authorised representative. I feel that is very different depending on whether it's like the bank or the government. Some are very streamlined. Some others you call up and they say, send me an email with your enduring power of attorney document. And it's just made me reflect that it's sort of like when you're in the middle of it, you're just sending this out, and it is a really private, personal document. So, I don't know if anyone else actually had any thoughts on that, but I feel like there isn't necessarily like a set way that people are encouraged to support people in that carer role when they are representing somebody. Just an email, and then you go, oh, yeah, okay, you're an authorised representative. And I'm like, where did that go? Who's got that? How can I see if you've got the most latest version? Just a reflection on that as a challenge that I definitely experienced.
I think that's also a really important point about having some of that information centralised, whether that fits in the ID component, where that sits. And the other thing is access to your own documents and seeing actually what an organisation has that's yours. I think that, and being able to request that they either delete or remove. We know digital's quite tricky with that, but that they are not keeping documents that aren't required or not keeping things that aren't necessary.
Yeah, definitely that destroying information or not you keeping information. I think a lot of organizations, a lot of small organizations are getting caught out by that as well. They don't necessarily have that process in kind of cleaning that up. But yeah, we digress a bit.
No worries. So we've spoken a lot about the challenges and some of the difficulties that carers experience when they are, in that digital landscape. But we know that it certainly can make it more difficult to access supports, but there may also be other opportunities in that digital space to improve access to support or services. So are there any opportunities that you see coming in the future that could be harnessed or that we see on the horizon? Obviously, we may need to provide support around that, but that are kind of in scope that you think that might be helpful?
Okay, I'll go.
You go first, Jess.
Yeah, go.
So, I mean, I do think that the opportunities that AI creates for people to access information is really significant. As long as they are aware of the information that they're accessing and how to make sure that it's correct or not. It's also, I mean, I do think one of the benefits of it is that we know in Australia we're a multicultural community, and there are people that English is not their first language. And so getting information to carers who are from culturally and linguistically diverse communities is really essential and can be quite challenging. So for us, we've seen definitely the use of AI translation tools to support people to better understand what is available to them, and also to be able to fill in forms and things that they don't necessarily understand. So I definitely see there is a benefit in the use of the kind of these AI tools to help people to be able to access support when they need it. And I suppose there's also, I mean, what AI is really good at is finding pathways through a significant amount of information. And so there are different tools that have been developed. I know one of them is called Kindship, that is actually about helping people navigate the NDIS system. And it's based on conversations that families of children with disabilities have been having within this organisation for a long time. So it's actually about supporting people as a peer support, but using AI to be able to do that. So I think there are definitely opportunities, but we need to make sure in the first instance that people have access to technology, that they have access to the internet, they can afford it, and that they have those basic skills and the knowledge about what is available to be able to start that process.
Great, thanks, Jess. And I think it's interesting. AI is such a buzzword at the moment.
It is,
and we know that there's some risk associated, but there is a lot of possibility there, like you said, to be able to kind of utilize that in the right ways with the right regulation.
And what I would just add to that is that AI is multiple things, it's multiple tools. And ultimately, if we talk to people about what is the outcome you are seeking, and there may be a tool that can help you get there, rather than just saying AI is going to fix everything. It's actually not just AI, there's multiple things for different reasons that you might want to use. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Richard or Nick, do you see any opportunities kind of into the future?
Yeah. Well, look, I think I'll just kind of add that I went to an event on Monday, and one of the carers said this, and I think it's really important that we say this, is making sure the carer's voice are actually designed in the digital services and actually front and center, but also different lenses of that, the young carer, the older carer, the multicultural, there's, making sure they've got enough inputs on that. So I think that's, that's an important part of how we think about the opportunities going forward. I do think, even on the non-practical, but more the personal aspect of a carer kind of, having that entertainment or that kind of respite or whatever the outlet is, not just from the practical forms and all these other things that are often part of it. And I've seen plenty of examples of that where, the carer that potentially has been physically isolated or socially isolated has been able to use technology to really kind of overcome that. I think that can still accelerate and do even better. in some way. So I think, and of course, AI with language. Yeah, I'll go into that, but yeah, I'm quite excited by all that. I think it's quite an exciting evolution.
Yeah, absolutely. And we haven't really touched much on that social component today, but there are some real great opportunities for enabling people to kind of participate in recreation activities, but also just to connect. We know isolation is a real challenge for many carers. So we saw in COVID, we know there's lots of barriers to accessing devices and the software and lots of different bits and pieces that carers need support through, but such a great opportunity to reconnect carers with either peers or family or community. Nick?
Yeah, there's so many. I think Jess, what you mentioned, something that I heard a while ago was like, AI is just a tool. It's not the holy grail. And I think it really comes down to what problem you're trying to solve specific. And even with carers, is AI always going to be the answer? Probably not. But it's about like understanding how it can be implemented, but then also flexibility behind that system, as Richard, you were touching on, is that the care is built into it. It's not somewhere where you can only have one person registered on the account, as a loose example. So making sure that any tool is designed with the care in mind. And then also, I think it's more around the educating. AI might not be the front, or whatever new technology is on the horizon. It might not be the front-facing element that person's dealing with, but it's making sure that they feel comfortable with what's happening with their data, where's it going, who's using it, even if AI is part of that. System. But yeah, I think there's great stuff being done, like in different adjacent fields as well. So really interested to see what sort of people come up with in even with like the VR stuff and what's the other one? All these things. There's all this stuff that's going on, and a lot of it you can look at and say, hey, how can we apply that? Is there an applicability within like the caring role and the digital navigation as well? So I think it's really exciting.
I think that like the health support tools are really, really interesting as well. There's so much going on that, all the wearables that are available, all of the opportunities that creates for you to be connected to health professionals more easily is brilliant, actually, and could really provide virtual support to carers that gives them a greater sense of connection and confidence in what they're doing. And also they will need to know how to use those tools. And so, it's making sure that education, as you said, Richard, is part of absolutely everything. It can't just be, oh yeah, somebody will know how to use that, that's fine. Actually, it's important that every specific tool that's being used, that there is that support on how to use that one, and how does it connect, and how does it support, and the choice is going to be a really big challenge as well, because there's going to be so many of those options. You want the one that fits best for you and the person you're caring for, not what's best for the company that's selling it.
Yeah. And that probably leads into before we hand over to the audience, our last question, and you may have already dropped your key takeaway there, Jess, but put it out there already. But from your experiences and your working with carers and your experience, Nick, we talked about the opportunities, but what do you see as the kind of key opportunity to improve digital inclusion for carers? Kind of what's the key takeaway you'd want people to know from this session on how they can support with improving carer digital inclusion?
I suppose, like for me, I know we sort of keep coming back to it, but it is around that education. We live in such a dynamic digital world at the moment that things are, as we keep saying, constantly changing, but it really just comes back to, it's the human at the end of the day that's interacting with these systems. So it's about supporting them rather than making the coolest, most fandangled new system over here. It's really about how do we understand what their needs and what they require in order to navigate, and also listening to them, talking to them, making sure that you're just not sending out some, the how-to guide that nobody can use and nobody understands. It's really about doing everything in collaboration rather than just pushing out like updates that you just expect people are going to be able to understand. And then the other thing, and I just keep losing it. Anyway, sorry, come back to me.
We'll come back around. Richard or Jeff?
Oh, okay. Yeah, look, I think I'm going to say the confidence to use the tools. I think, we've had these couple of tipping points. COVID really pushed everyone into the video communication tools and kind of accelerated some of that, and that helped with breaking down geographic barriers. I think things like AI really help with some of these other things, language and accessibility and information kind of synthesizing, but you kind of need to know how to use it. So it's always going to be something, some sort of technology. Someone has to kind of guide us on how to use it. And so I'm a big fan of that, building the confidence in there. I think the safety and trust is the real bigger thing right now with AI, with that kind of speed of things for the person and the person they're caring for. That is the thing that really is needing education support and all those things that we've been talking about, because that's the big scary beast around the tech, so to speak.
Yeah. And if there isn't that safety and trust, people won't engage with it, and
No.
then they can't access the support that you can only access through that digital space.
Yeah.
Jess?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going to go to a systems level, actually, I think. And, I think it's really important that we have data that supports all of the conversation that we're having, because, for us to make sure that we have funding available to provide that education, that there are opportunities for people to come together and learn, shouldn't just be on the individual's responsibility to do that. So, but we need the stats. We need some focus on what are the specific needs of carers in this space, and how do we advocate to government to feed those. Absolutely. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to work together on how do we measure that actually, and what does work. What have we seen that works in community, so that we can replicate that and make sure that that there's support available for people, because as you said, carers are not just one group of people. They are multiple groups, and we need to keep advocating to government around the ease and accessibility of their systems. And the interoperability. That's a very big word that I don't.
I'm glad you tried to say it. I was like, I'm not trying to say that one.
But how do those systems talk to each other, so we don't have to tell people the same story 15 times? So absolutely. I think that's my takeaway.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jess. And that research piece is so important. We know carers aren't included in the Digital Inclusion Index, so it's hard to even know what baseline are we working from, and is what we're doing working. And that systems integration is also so important. Yes, we can upskill carers and educate carers, but what can happen on the other end to make that easier as well? So we'll open up to some questions. There's a couple of questions in the chat and a couple of comments. Thanks for those who have shared their experience with challenges that they might have had, or new tools they might be using. We've got a question from Leanne. What is the panel's view on the intersection of education level with comprehension of information that is provided in a written form? So I'm not sure, Leanne, if you wanted to add to that at all, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely say that there is a connection, right? But so for people who have low literacy in their language of origin or in English, are going to find digital inclusion more difficult, digital literacy more difficult, because most of the things that are available are written, and all of the access that you have to government services are through forms and things like that. So we definitely know that there is an intersection there, and again, this is where I think the opportunity of AI and different kinds of tools that can read things to you rather than you having to type, that you can have in your own language, is really beneficial. But there definitely is a connection between literacy in your language and digital literacy.
Does anyone else have any other thoughts on that?
Probably echo what Jess said. Yeah, I think that shares my experience.
Yeah, just to talk from some of our community partners that work with carers, but also with women in culturally and linguistically diverse communities, the opportunity to have bilingual mentors that support people to access those systems is really, really important. So helping people to navigate needs those people working alongside that can support that.
Right. Thanks for that, Jess. We have a question from Angela, but I can see her hand is up as well. So I might just allow her to talk, and then she can ask the question directly, if that's okay. You should be able to talk now, Angela.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Thanks, panel, for allowing me to say hi. But my question was about your view, I guess, the role of not just individual carers, because clearly sometimes a person doesn't have one carer, but also the peer support network and the carer community, the wider community around driving that adoption and effective use of technology in the caring space. But I guess I was thinking of, there are some examples you've thought about or you've seen where that peer-led initiatives have really been successful in supporting carers using digital tools?
Thanks, Angela.
Richard?
Yeah, well, some of the programs we've seen with Carers New South Wales that we work together on, I think, it's integrating the digital into an existing group, so to speak. So I think that is key, not keeping digital as a separate go-to sort of thing. I think bringing that into those organic groups. I know in villages, retirement villages, there's carers groups sometimes of partners that have passed away and they still catch up. And so I would suggest, bring the digital into that kind of space, conversations. That's where the spam, the scam, and all that conversation that Jess was saying, that's where they would be able to share that there. We've seen great examples online during COVID when we kind of saw people come together with peers and then they've connected afterwards and kind of stayed in touch and gone into the carer hangouts and various things that Carers New South Wales offered up. But our role was in helping to open up the digital access so they could participate in that. So they were just some examples that I've seen, but happy to hear, anyone else.
I mean, I would say the same thing, Richard. I mean, both here, but also internationally, it has been about, embedding digital into carers support. And we see that across different groups of people as well. Actually, if you're like, digital is part of everything today. To do anything, you need to be understanding technology. And so embedding that within places where people are accessing support already is the most useful way of being able to do that. So I think that's absolutely where we should be focusing. And in the UK, they've got some research around that as well. That's really shown that embedding that within the carers support network is really helpful to people.
Yeah, I suppose I'll just add, in my role at Caring Co, one of my main focuses is it's giving the people the right information at the right time. And I think that's really key. It's really, you're trying to break down really complex systems and you're trying to make it understandable in how to navigate, but also the difference between like understanding the system and then navigating the system. And it's quite easy to get overwhelmed. So I just, think bite-sized people, trying to give people the information that they need at that time and then slowly build on that over the course of however long, to be able to keep supporting them over the caring journey and whatever they're trying to navigate.
Yeah, thanks for those insights. Was there any more questions from the chat before we wrap up? We probably have about time for one more. Otherwise, I might just reflect on some of the comments in the chat. So there was a comment from Chris just raising the difficulty of navigating the NDIS and how difficult that has been, and knowing the right language sometimes even is just such an important part of it, and having the right words to be able to put to things.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's that, as you said, Nick, it is about the understanding a system and navigating a system are two very different things. I mean, I would say this is, in terms of language, this is one of the things that, some of the AI tools are really helpful for. So if you were, you said you put into ChatGPT or one of them saying, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm a person navigating this system. What is the right language that I need to use to be able to be part of this conversation? It comes back with incredible amounts of information that's really helpful. And so, it's, having the right language, having the right opportunity, that's helpful. But then navigating the system is still something that you have to work through, because that's still a person-to-person thing.
We often talk about kind of that ChatGPT often provides, or that kind of AI approach can provide you with good prompts. It's a good start point when you don't
Yes,
know where
that's
to
right.
start. So
Yeah.
you might say, what's the language? And then you can go and take some of those words and then look them up and find out more about
Yes.
those particular things. So it can really provide that start point to kind of where to go next, or when you don't even know what you're looking for, you can kind of put in I mean, you can also Google. I always find it funny that I put in random Google questions and I think it's not going to know how do I make a box here? And someone's asked that question before. But yeah, I think those types of tools for getting you started are so helpful.
And
Yeah.
I think it's, what I didn't mention, I think with the AI side of things, the way I kind of teach it, and it's been really well kind of received, is that example of you've got this digital system, but for those scenarios, not just the practicality, but also the device troubleshooting and kind of giving them some key, because now with so many different devices, platforms, changes, versions, that sort of thing, it actually is, if there's one thing people can be doing is teaching that carer or the person they're caring for to understand how to use that as the digital kind of skill to help them problem solve, because they might be doing it at 3 o'clock in the morning if that's the time that they can actually do the thing that they're being required to do. And that's the other thing, is when are they doing this thing?
And I think we have that conversation a lot. Yes, the digital makes it easy to be able to do it at 3 o'clock when you're available, but there's often not support at 3 o'clock to be able to do that. If something goes wrong or if you can't move forward, you can't really call anyone or rely on anyone. So that is a really important point about how do we even teach people to troubleshoot, so when things do go wrong, they can do it themselves. We just had one more comment around some fraud activity in online purchase, and just a discussion about using the digital bank card and how that's been useful in having dynamic CCV numbers. So there are some things, that's where we see those banks kind of taking a step in what can they put in place to try and support with some of those risks and those scams that are happening. So positive to see there are new and kind of emerging ways to try and keep people safe. Just as we wrap up, so thanks so much to our panelists for joining today. It's been so great to be able to hear from you, to hear your insights and to share with everyone that's been able to join us. Just as we close, I just wanted to share some resources that we have available at the moment that may be of interest to yourself or the carers that you work with. So as Richard mentioned, we've been working with Your Link for some time to support carer digital confidence and inclusion. And one of the kind of key pieces that is available online is our Digital Confidence Tips for Carers video series. So one of our team will be just putting the link for that in the chat. So that's a range of videos that provide some skills tips, how to complete online forms, and some general device tips, including accessibility, noting that we know things are changing at a rapid pace, but we've tried to take that into account in terms of how we've put those together. It's around fundamentals and foundations that you can hopefully then apply in different places for carers. They're just short videos. We know carers often are time poor. The other component is next week, as part of Get Online Week, we'll be running a webinar on cybersecurity for carers. We're running them throughout the year, and we'll be posting some videos later in the year of some key sections. So that will be running 3 to 3:45 next Tuesday afternoon. And each one has had a slightly different focus areas to kind of build on in case people are attending all, but we hope to be able to share some of those key things. So we'll be focusing on spotting misinformation and fake news, AI in your digital footprint, what is a digital legacy and what should you consider, and some privacy settings discussions. So please do share those also with the carers that you come into contact with. We're hoping that will support carers to better understand that staying safe component, so that as we do move into that digital landscape, or we're already in it, but as we keep going in that direction, we will continue to support carers with their understanding of how to stay safe and feeling confident.
Can I just do a pitch, Mel, for Get Online Week more broadly as well, because it is, it's next week, and we have, over 700 events happening all over the country next week. So I know Richard and Mel, you're both part of lots of those. So, if people are looking for, some support and an opportunity to do that in a fun way, and to learn more about AI or staying safe, or just basics of using technology, there are events close to you. So on our website, and you can see Get Online Week is the key thing that we're talking about at the moment. So you'll find a map there and information about where you can get support.
Absolutely. And we'll share the link to that after the session as well. We'll share a recording of this session, as well as the link to where you can find about more about Get Online Week activities. Sorry, Richard, were you going to say something?
No, all good.
Okay, I see you fixing your mic, so I was like, I don't want to miss you.
No, all good, thank you.
I'm impressed that we've kept to time. It's been a great conversation, and thanks so much to our panelists for joining. And I hope that everyone can, there's still a few more Carers Week events going on throughout the rest of the week as well, through the National Carers Week Grants Program, but as well as some local events. So you can check our website or your local carer support group and see what they've got going on. And hopefully you'll be able to still join something if there is anything else this week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks
Thank
all.
Great
you.
combo.
Thanks.
Loved it.
Thanks all. Thanks so much. Have a good afternoon.